Good evening. This is the September 10th, 2019 meeting of the East Long Meadow Town Council. I'm opening the meeting now with a Pledge of Allegiance followed by our moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we ask that you keep our first responders and our servicemen and women around the globe in your thoughts this evening, as well as we are on the eve of the anniversary of the attacks on our country at the World Trade Center in 2001. We ask you to keep your thoughts around the victims of that tragedy as well as their families. Thank you. In accordance with Mass General Law, this meeting is being audio taped and videotaped. If there is anyone else in the audience this evening doing the same, would you please identify yourselves? Seeing none, we will move on. Under public comments, Mr. Joe Ford, our former counselor, was scheduled to speak to us this evening in his absence because he has had a change in his business schedule and is still in Boston and was not able to get back in a timely manner. So I would like first to announce that Mr. Ford has resigned his seat on the council effective August 24th and would like to read this following statement from Joe this afternoon. It has been a pleasure to serve the town over the last 3.5 years. I am honored to have been a part of this transformation and feel like the council has accomplished a lot for the community. It has been a great learning experience, and I have met some amazing people in town. We have some very important initiatives in front of us, and I feel that it is time for me to step down given my time constraints. There are other ways that I can help the town, and I am looking forward to doing this in my next chapter. Again, I want to thank the residents for the opportunity they gave me to serve the town of East Long Meadow. Sincerely, Joseph Ford. So on behalf of the rest of the council, we thank Mr. Ford for his 3.5 years as our colleague and in service to the town. What I would like to say is that the charter is specific about vacancies on the council. And the language says that within 30 days of notification of a vacancy, the council president must call for a special meeting, at which point a replacement will be appointed by the full council to the open seat. The appointment will be for simply the balance of, in this case, Mr. Ford's term, which would end on June 30th, but ironically, he was also up for re-election in the coming year. So the person who is appointed would have the opportunity, if he or she chose, to run for the permanent seat, but that is in the future. That said, I am going to call for a special council meeting on Tuesday, the 2 weeks from today, 24th of September, to start at 5 o'clock, because we have a regular scheduled meeting that is on pace for 6 o'clock. At the 5 o'clock meeting, those individuals who have thus far indicated an interest in serving, and at this point today, there are 4 individuals who have submitted letters of interest and accompanying resumes. And if there are any others, and I'll say this publicly, so it's out there for any other residents in town, if there are any others who feel inclined to offer their service and show an interest in serving out Mr. Ford's term, if you would kindly notify Mr. Florence, our town clerk, by phone or by email, no later than for close of business on this Friday. Is Friday the
13th.
Oh, isn't that a
Full moon.
and it's a full moon. By Friday the 13th. Going forward then on the 24th, beginning at 5, we will do what we did 2 years ago when Mr. Eric Madison vacated his seat, and that is to give each candidate an opportunity to speak before the council and elaborate on how they feel they are qualified and some of their thoughts and visions for the town. And at hopefully later that evening, the council will vote to appoint a successor for Mr. Ford. Okay, also under public comments is Ms. Andrea Morissette regarding the topic of mosquito control. Is Ms. Morissette in the, yes, she is. Would you mind coming forward and just for the record, please state your name and address?
Andrea Morissette, 52 East Village Road, East Long Meadow. By the way, I was at the town hall because nobody told me the meeting was here. I went to every single door. So here I am. So the town has been spraying for the mosquitoes. I live in the wetlands. And for, I don't know, I've lived here almost 30 years and we've been doing it and we haven't had a problem. Now we have the Triple E as well as West Nile, and it is showing up in East Long Meadow. So they decide, oh, we're not going to spray. So now I was hearing that they said they were dropping some pellets or something into the catch basin. My catch basin is all the way to the top. I've called the DPW to come and empty it. It never gets done. And there's no pellets in there. They can't possibly go around and put pellets in every single storm drain. There's no way. They're not doing it. And it's really, really bad. I couldn't even go out and sit on my deck this summer. It was that bad. I have woods all behind me and on the side of me. And I called up the health department, talked to whoever it was, and she said, oh, they decided not to spray anymore. It doesn't make sense, especially when not only do we have the West Nile here in East Long Meadow, but the Triple E, and now we're not going to do that? And then they said, oh, June and July, it wasn't as effective, but August, it was more effective, and September. So here we are in September. Why can't we do something?
Typically, when the public asks to make a comment, the council will take it under advisement. But in this case, because your concern goes to public safety, I'm going to make a statement. I have been in contact with Amy Petrosky, our Director of Public Health, a number of times last week and yesterday as well. And you are correct, there have been 2 cases of confirmed Triple E virus in East Long Meadow. What I am told by Ms. Petrosky, and I believe there was a short segment on the local news as well in the last couple of days, is that as of yesterday, the Department of Public Health still maintains that the level of threat, those are the words that the DPH uses, in East Long Meadow is at moderate. It is not, there are 2 higher ones, which is extreme and critical. Evidently, certain towns in the greater Worcester area and in the greater Boston area have achieved those levels of safety threat, and the state will conduct some spraying there. However, the circumstances in East Long Meadow are not to that point yet, and though any department of public health in any community can make its own decisions, they are bound to follow the guidelines and the suggestions and the protocols of the DPH. So that's my best information now. I will also say that Amy and the Board of Health came before us in the spring about a mosquito control program that they were part of within the Department of Public Health. And one of the little facts that still sticks in my head under mosquitoes is that the lifespan of aerial spraying is 3 days, but the lifespan of pellets dropped into the catch basin is 30. And that is why, I'm assuming that the state is moving or compelled to spray now in the 2 areas out east because they feel it's at critical. But apparently research bears the fact that the pellets in the catch basins are more effective. I can't speak to when the last time the pellets were placed in catch basins or how many catch basins in town they were placed in. That's something I can certainly refer to Ms. Petrosky. And I know Mr. Senator Lesser and I had a phone conversation, not to put you on the spot, but I will.
Always happy.
Last week, Senator, are you able to share any other information? I don't want to misspeak here.
No, just what you said. I mainly just called President Hill just to let her know that we were monitoring it and, and that we're a resource if you need anything. And there is spraying scheduled, but they're triaging it based on, based on what the state DPH determines to be the threat level or the risk level. So East Long Meadow is at an elevated risk, but is not at the highest risk. So the spraying is going to be done, in accordance with the risk assessment.
I heard on the news, it was like over a month ago, that it was in Munson. And Munson's next to Wilbraham, and then it was Wilbraham, and Wilbraham's right next to East Long Meadow, and it just keeps coming and coming and coming closer. All it takes is one person to die from that triple E or get the West Nile, just one. Do we want to take that chance? What are we saving? They're not putting those pellets in every single catch basin, I can tell you that. There's no way.
The best I can say to you tonight, Ms. Morissette, is that I will certainly have a phone conversation or in person tomorrow with Ms. Petrosky and see if there's an update. She told me Monday that typically every Monday, the state issues a status of every community as it relates to these 2 viruses. And I'm certain that if East Long Meadow's label moves higher than moderate, then steps will need to be taken. But I can't look into that crystal ball and say that.
I'd love to know how much money we're saving by not spraying.
That I can't answer for you right now, ma'am, either. But I can certainly try to get those questions answered.
Okay. So I think what I have to do now is call the DPW again and tell them to empty my catch basin out front.
One of us here can do that as well.
I said, we have a work order. Yeah, I know. I called it in.
Can you simply remind me of your address again?
52 East Village. Last house on the hill.
I'll speak with Mr. Fenney tomorrow morning.
Okay?
See if that can be expedited.
I was going to say, through the chair, after receiving your phone calls and calling you, I did have the opportunity to go to Town Hall yesterday, and I met with Amy. And our visit was very short because she had another meeting scheduled pertaining to this mosquito issue with other affiliates that would have information on a direction that a community might want to move. At this time, I don't have the outcome of the meeting, nor does Ms. Hill, but once the findings from those meetings become relevant, then we will be able to pass that on and share it to you. So I appreciate the calls, too.
Thank you. I'm just glad I don't have little children playing outside in the backyard. I think it's awful. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to council comments. Do we have any other comments from the council at this time? Okay. On to town manager's report. For those of you in the viewing audience or the live audience, it sounds like we're on Jeopardy or some other kind of interactive show. I'm happy to introduce Mary McNally, the acting town manager right now. and welcome her, as we did a few weeks back, to East Long Meadow, and look forward to some positive work relationships with her throughout the next few months. And that said, Mary, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your welcoming me to East Long Meadow. I do appreciate the opportunity that's been given to me to manage the town's affairs while you search for a permanent town manager. My remarks tonight are very brief. I've only been here 2 weeks, which essentially is 7 days, because I'm on a limited part-time schedule of approximately 18 hours a week. I'm trying to work 3 days at 6 hours, give or take, but I'm, with the indulgence of the council president and the other members, have some flexibility depending on the needs of the employees and department heads. I'm trying to accommodate where people need me to be as opposed to where I would want to be necessarily. To date, my attention has been on human resource matters. There's a variety, a miscellaneous variety of issues pending in the town. Some are disciplinary, some are contractual, some involve vacancies in key positions. So I'm trying to get a handle on all of that as a first priority. And I am intending to meet with all the department heads next week to continue the policy or the practice of monthly department head meetings so that I can be in communication directly with each department head with respect to their budget needs, their capital planning needs, and their individual concerns for how they think they can better manage their departments and how I can assist with that. I have met with a couple of department heads already. As I said, I'm trying to accommodate people, and talked about some key issues that are pending in town, primarily with police and fire departments. So that said, that's about all I have to report on for now, but I'm enjoying it so far. To those who've asked, so far so good, so thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Under number 6, approval of minutes, we have the August 21st, 2019 open session minutes in your packet. If you've had an opportunity to look those over and review them, if there are any changes that you feel need to be made, please raise that concern now, if you will. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the August 21st, 2019 open session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor of approving the August 21st minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Opposed, please say nay. Motion passes 4-0-1. Okay, we have some very exciting business now under communication, correspondence, and announcements. And we're very pleased to have 3 gentlemen with us tonight. It's like the trifecta. They're all in the room at the same time. Senator Eric Lesser, Representatives Brian Ash and Angelo Pupolo. These 3 gentlemen do an outstanding job representing the needs of our community. And they are here tonight to present a resolution regarding our town's 125th anniversary. So, gentlemen?
Thank you, Madam President, council members, Mary, Tom, and residents of East Long Meadow. I'm honored to be here along with my colleagues, Representative Angelo Pupolo and Senator Lesser, to present a joint resolution from the Massachusetts House of Representatives and the Massachusetts Senate. I will read off I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll read off a brief portion of it, say a few words, and I'm sure my colleagues would like to say a few words. So
Everyone needs to pay attention because this is the only thing we've ever all agreed on.
yeah, I know, right? You know, we've been in a while. You gotta pull out the glasses. Massachusetts General Court resolutions commending the town of East Long Meadow for the celebration of its 150th anniversary of incorporation. Resolved that a copy of these resolutions be forwarded by the clerk of the House of Representatives and the Senate President to the town of East Long Meadow. This is signed by the Speaker of the House, by the Senate President, by the clerks of both the Massachusetts House of Representatives, the Massachusetts Senate, and it's signed by myself, Representative Pupolo, and Senator Lesser. And I just want to say personally, you know, as a child, I lived in East Long Meadow for a while, from the late 60s to the mid 70s. And so this is even more special when I see the 125th anniversary. And I remember, you know, playing baseball at Blackman's Pond, going to Tian's, going to King's, and now coming through East Long Meadow and seeing how the town has grown with the times, but it's also held that hometown feel, that feeling that you get in Western Mass and New England. So I'm proud to be here with my colleagues. I'm proud to be able to present this to all of you, to recognize 125 years, and to wish the town and all the residents many, many more years of success and good health.
Thanks. I'll just be very brief. Just want to say thank you. Want to say congratulations to the board and of course to the entire town. I actually do remember pretty vividly the 100th anniversary when they did the fireworks display. I remember going with my family. It was a big deal. No, it was a big deal. We were allowed to stay up late on it. Yeah, and so I just, on a more serious note, though, I do want to say it doesn't come by accident. 125 years, and it's the decisions that are made collectively by the community. Of course, our police and fire, the school department. It's a well-run town, and it's a lot of community effort that goes into building a vibrant community like this. And you know, I'm very confident that 125 years from now, there's going to be our predecessor, our progeny will be here, and will be here in a town that's just healthy and strong because of the decisions that are all made in this chamber and collectively every single day in each of our neighborhoods and among each of our families. So congrats and thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the council, Mary, neighbor, good to see you, Tom. Everybody that's gathered here tonight, certainly want to say congratulations. You know, 125 years, as was alluded to, you know, a lot of changes, right? Whether it's communications, whether it's transportation issues, or you name it, right? The town doesn't look the same as it did 125 years ago. But one thing's been consistent, certainly, is the great leadership that this town has had, as well as the residents and the dedication and the commitment that people have to make the quality of life here better each and every day. And to do that, make it better for the residents to live here, work, and raise a family. So, you know, it's a great community, very pleased and honored to represent the town in Boston. And, you know, when you look at, you know, when the Madam Chair announced, you know, we get 3 exciting members here, or guests here, you kind of have to look around. These 3 politicians are exciting, right? But on a state level, but seriously, it's an honor and privilege, you know, to represent the town and to be here and recognize the 125th and so many great things, you know, that go on right in this community. I mean, we're here day in and day out, and you know, this is just one thing that, you know, certainly we want to recognize the town for this, you know, this huge sort of, you know, monumental year. A lot of great things. The 3 of us, led by Representative Ash, were able to secure some money for the Veterans Monument that's going to be here. There's a lot of great things going on right in town. Tomorrow we've got the 9/11 Vigil. I think one of the only kind in the Commonwealth, if not the area, as a vigil, which celebrates or recognizes, I should say, the anniversary, which is again critically important. And tomorrow there will be a big crowd out. Because East Long Meadow does not forget, and that's important, and that's part of sort of the, you know, the charm and the small town goodness and wholesomeness, if you will, of East Long Meadow. So again, I want to thank you all, congratulate you. I've stolen this line, Eric's stolen this line, but you know, I'll use it tonight because he didn't say it. This is the only thing you'll ever get free from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So take it, and you've got even frame, so it's even better. So thank you all.
And your task, everybody tonight, I want you to use progeny. Many may have to look it up.
Yeah, Mary, how do you spell it? You got that?
Yeah, I don't know how to spell it.
I bet you know how to use it.
That's like a picture.
Yeah, you guys want to bump
Yeah, that's all
your
good.
picture?
The
White button right there. Thanks.
Started one.
you here.
That's okay.
See if I can get that done.
All right, ready? Which camera first?
Well, let's look at Jennifer first and then out.
Let me get all of you in there. Looks like you like each other.
Smile.
Thank you.
All right, over here. Excellent.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Back to business.
Appreciate it. Good seeing you. Good to thank you.
Yeah, no, he's on the good stuff. Good. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Of course, Thank you. Yeah, whenever you'd like. I'll see you.
We're doing 2021 for the 30th last week. Okay. But we're back for 2021, which is the last week, which is on the AFC Championship. What we're doing out of Puerto Rico. That's why it's a lot.
I would say it's
Yes,
the best. And there are other meetings scheduled, so.
Okay, following that presentation, we have another one equally as important this evening, and that is regarding a FEMA certificate to our Fire Chief, Paul Morissette. Chief Morissette, and I'm reading from a letter from the Superintendent of the National Fire Academy under the U.S. Fire Administration. Chief Morissette has now successfully completed the EFOP and the required applied research on behalf of the NFA. The enclosed EFOP certificate has been forwarded to you for formal presentation to this dedicated member of your department at your next convenience. And this is the U.S. Fire Administration's National Fire Academy Executive Fire Officer Program. So, we are extremely pleased and very fortunate that a member of our community, a hardworking member of our community, has devoted the time to this important program. And Chief, if you wouldn't mind coming up, we're more than happy to present you with this hard-earned certificate this evening. Do you want to say something?
First of all, I'll say thank you for the opportunity. 4 years ago, or 4.5 years ago, when I came in front of the Board of Selectmen back then, we needed authorization from the fire chief's boss to actually attend the program. It's a 4-year commitment. They don't want somebody going in there and then a year later the management of that individual says you can no longer be part of the program. It was exciting. I met fire chiefs, deputy fire chiefs from all over the country. I have friends in California, friends in Arizona, friends in Texas, Montana, and it's a great network. I learned a lot. Every year, first year is executive development, goes right into community risk reduction, goes right into emergency operations with emergency services, and then it goes into executive leadership. So I think it takes the fire chief from being a leader supervisor into being a leader manager, which when you're managing initially 8 full-time career firefighters and several call firefighters to now managing 20, management's different than leadership in my eyes. And I hope I can continue to do what I'm doing and bring value to the town. Some of the programs that I've instituted in the department. I come right from what I've learned. So keep it going and hopefully make everybody in town proud. I appreciate it.
Congratulations. The next item on our agenda is the East Long Meadow Candlelight Vigil in memory of September 11, 2001. Chief, do you want to just please say a few words about that?
Yes. So the vigil starts tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Very similar as it's been in the past. We're watching the weather very closely. They're talking some storms in the afternoon, so later in the afternoon into the evening. So we may move it inside, but we'll be prepared for that. So if somebody is coming tomorrow evening and they don't see the people right out front, it's going to be in the apparatus bays. There's plenty of room for everybody. We may not have the candlelight portion of it because we don't like the candles inside the fire station, but we'll still have it. And it's something that was started many years ago. You know, in 2002 we had the first one, and we make sure we do it every year because we don't want to forget. Everybody remembers that day, where they were that day. Even Eric Lesser, how young he is, but we all have those memories, and we never want to forget. So it's the least we can do.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll be
you.
there tomorrow evening. Okay, moving on to number 8, public hearings. 8A, proposed local acceptance of MGL Chapter 140, Section 185I, regarding a fortune teller's license. And this is a second reading this evening, and we are exactly, we're on time, so we can begin that hearing. I need my protocol. Thank you. The reason,
Okay, thank you.
the reason for this public hearing is to read for the second time a new proposed general bylaw to address a local acceptance regarding a fortune teller's license in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 140, Section 185I. The counselors with us this evening from the left are Counselors Page, Anderson, Hill, Kane, and Henry. This is the protocol that we'll follow. I'll open the public meeting. The clerk will read the legal notice into the record. The applicant will have an opportunity to read the new proposed general bylaw to address this local acceptance. The meeting is being recorded, and any person who wishes to speak must first identify themselves clearly and state their home address. After the applicant, in this case it is the council, has finished the presentation, the hearing will open. And again, anyone wishing to speak must be direct and to the point. All speaking parties must address the council and not one another. When no one else has anything further to say, the council will discuss among themselves the matters pertinent to the proposed bylaw, and then the council will then take a vote as to whether to proceed in whatever appropriate manner may be necessary. That said, I'm going to open the public hearing, and Mr. Florence, would you please read the legal notice into the record?
Yes. The East Long Meadow Town Council will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, September 10th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. at the Council on Aging located at 328 North Main Street for a second reading to address a proposed local acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 185I regarding a fortune teller's license. Information relating to this proposed bylaw is on file with the town clerk and available for review by the public. For the council, Thomas Florence, clerk of the council.
Thank you. Do we have the verbiage for the new proposed general bylaw, Mr. Florence?
It's in your packet.
Okay, I'm sorry. My bad. Mr. Kane, could you read that for us, please?
Certainly. Section 185I, no person shall tell fortunes for money unless a license therefore has been issued by the local licensing authority. Said license shall be granted only to applicants who have resided continuously in the city or town in which the license is sought for at least 12 months immediately preceding the date of application. No such license shall be transferred or assigned unless otherwise established in a town by town meeting action and in a city by city council action, and in a town with no town meeting by town council action, by adoption of appropriate bylaws and ordinances to set such fees. The fee for each license granted under this section shall be $2, but in no event shall any such fee be greater than $50. Whoever tells fortunes for money, unless licensed under this section, shall be punished by a fine of not more than $100.
Thank you. I'm going to now ask our counsel, Attorney Maynard, to come forward and to give us some background information. During the previous public hearing, questions came from the audience relative to the presence of fortune teller licenses and related questions throughout the Commonwealth. We instructed Mr. Maynard to please do some research for us on that. So I'm going to ask Kevin now to give us some insight on that before we go forward with the public comment.
Thank you, Madam President. I am Kevin Maynard at Bulkley, Richardson, and Jelinas. I am the town attorney. First, let me just comment, as I have in a memo to the town council, that acknowledgement of this state authority does not act as a bylaw, a town bylaw. That if the town council chooses to acknowledge its authority given by this state statute to enact the bylaw, it then needs to go through the process of enacting that bylaw through your normal course of procedure. With respect to some of the questions that were asked, which centered around, do we have to have a bylaw? What might that bylaw include? How would we define fortune telling, etc.? What we have done is laid out for you what our research has shown in terms of what other communities in the Commonwealth have done. We're not able to determine how many municipalities have adopted such a bylaw. We have identified, I think, 4 or 5 that we've described for you. We have identified at least one municipality that appears not to have any bylaw, yet houses a psychic telling business, which could, in all likelihood, be regulated by a bylaw if that municipality chose to have one. The municipalities that have adopted bylaws really run the gamut from those who simply say, thou must have a license to tell fortunes, period, to here's how we define fortune telling, and defines it to a fairly well with a very long descriptor, which includes a lot of the things that a member of the public was describing at your last meeting as things that are debatable whether or not they constitute fortune telling. But by the nature of regulation, if the town were to decide, A, that it should adopt a bylaw so as to be able to regulate these kinds of activities, then B, it can decide how to define fortune telling so as to be able to regulate it. It's certainly within your purview to regulate the licensing of fortune telling. It is within your discretion not to choose not to adopt such a regulation. To not do so in the face of at least one member of the public saying, not only are we engaged in these kinds of activities, but we actually host a fair, I think may invite some kind of reaction to those aware of such activities and aware that there is no regulatory effort on the part of the council. So you'll have to make a decision whether or not to regulate. You certainly have the authority under the state statute that has now been read and reread. And if you choose to adopt some form of regulation, you ought to go through your normal paces in terms of how you would adopt such a bylaw and what that bylaw would read. I'm happy to answer any further questions any of you have.
Any questions from the council? We're straying a little bit, we're twisting the protocol a little bit, but maybe we can get to that after there's further or any public comment.
Sure.
At this time, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to this situation? If so, would you please come forward?
Donna Utter, 13 Calkins Avenue, East Long Meadow. I appreciate you considering this, and of course would like, I know it's time involved, but I would still like to see the town do something about a license for fortune telling. Does anybody have questions of me?
Following the protocol, we're not allowed to
That's
do
right.
that at this point.
That's right.
I know it's a very, seems like a very stilted process,
Right,
but
okay,
thank you for that information.
thank you.
And your,
How y'all's doing? Hello,
hello again.
I'm Wesley Crouch, 65 Main Street in Hamden, Massachusetts. Again, I would just like to reiterate that we're not opposing any rules or regulations. We're just trying to ask the questions of how we run a business under the rules and regulations. As far as like establishment licenses versus non-establishment license, the residency requirement's kind of concerning. I'm not sure how that would work. Is it the legal entity resident, or is the individual person who's going to be reading the license or not? These are some just the basic things that I think that need to be heard and expressed before we can really formulate what our response would be, basically, because we don't know the law yet, right? What you guys decide to do. So I'm just expressing those concerns. There's been a few readers who are really concerned. I've had a few calls, and I've been trying to tell them, hey, everything's working out. You know, we're working through the process. So it will be a fun thing down the road, I'm sure. So anyways, I just want to let you guys know, if you have any issues or any needs, or if you have any questions about what we do, please stop by or have a meeting with the public that we can have a back and forth, which would be a good thing to do as well. So, but we haven't answered any questions from last time. Is it an establishment or not an establishment? Is it residency or not a residency? Is it, you know, what are we going to do as far as individual licensees, or, you know, a lot, because West Springfield, we just had a psychic fair of like 60 or 70 readers there, you know. They have a law. I mean, what do they do, you know? So we're just trying to figure out the parameters, and I'm getting redundant now, but I know you can't ask me questions, but if there's anything you guys need, just figure out a way to contact me, or, you know, whatever the legal procedures are. You know, that way we can show you what we do, how we do it, process, procedures, things that we have in place that may be beneficial to the council. Again, we're not opposed to any rules or laws. We're just trying to say, what are the rules and what are the laws, you know, that we have to work with. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak at this time? Moving forward then, is there anybody here on the council table wish to comment on this?
I think we should close the public hearing.
No, we don't need to. We'll do it at the end. Mr. Henry?
I think that the first question we have is whether to adopt or acknowledge the bylaw or not. And before going into the details, I'm looking at 3 major gray areas, big gray areas. Residency is a big gray area because not everybody that comes to an establishment to work there lives in town. And I know that that's been litigated, but it's only been litigated once, to my knowledge. And so it's not really a precedent. The question of establishment versus personal, you know, you look at it, no person shall tell fortunes. I mean, I don't know that that's been litigated, and I might ask Attorney Maynard if that's an issue, because if it is, if an establishment can't be regulated, or if establishment can't be receive this license, then everybody in that establishment has to get one. And then the definition itself. The definition is really, really key, and all the examples that we have here have different definitions. And you can get caught in the minutia. So to me, these three gray areas make it more dangerous than not to adopt this regulation until or unless it becomes a serious issue. And I would ask Attorney Maynard if he knows, if he's researched the question of establishment versus personal.
Well, certainly in other realms, a person is defined and has been defined to include entities.
Corporation.
I think as Mitt Romney famously said, a corporation is a person too. And other entities can be deemed persons within the language of that statute. As to the others, I mean, it really is largely a blank slate that you'd be working with, and that's a double-edged issue. It's a double-edged slate, if you will. You really have largely free rein to determine whether it's an establishment, whether an establishment can obtain a license as well as an individual, whether how the residency requirement for an establishment would be determined or satisfied, what the definition of fortune telling is. There is no definition, as you know, provided in the statute. As you pointed out, Councilor Henry, the examples that I've provided and that I'm aware of really run the gamut between no definition at all, simply repetition of the term, to a very minute definition. And you're right, the first question that you must address is whether there is sufficient need to be addressed in the town of East Long Meadow to adopt a regulation before you decide what that regulation is to read.
How would the council feel about sending this matter to the bylaw subcommittee to hammer out whether or not there ought to be a bylaw stipulating this?
I might oppose on the basis that the bylaw subcommittee, the responsibility is to write bylaws. Or really, not to write bylaws, but to approve bylaws, to review and approve bylaws. And until this council decides that a bylaw, or that the adoption is necessary, a bylaw is not. So I would argue against it.
Okay.
Through the chair, my thoughts, I agree with Councilor Henry. I don't feel, and I understand what the petitioner is saying, even though we're technically the petitioner, but Donna is the one who initiated it. And I understand she wants to say that what I am doing, I want legitimized in East Long Meadow. But I feel I have no problem legitimizing it without going to the extent of doing this. Because I do believe, especially, and I know, like I said, points noted about the 12-month rule and stuff, but I do think it has a chilling effect on people that want to read fortunes, that want to come here for whether it's our carnival or other events, or whether it's a holistic type business that wants to have a visitor or somebody to come in. I mean, we're having, coming up for the, and I know it's not apples to apples, but over at the Norcross House, we're having this, paranormal. What if one of the speakers there, and maybe that individual is being paid, says, all right, here's what happened, but here's what I see happening, or whatever. I'm making this stuff up. I think that this is going to create more of a limiting effect as we move forward. I don't believe there's going to be I think it's going to cause more people to be called out for violating this, of this thing for whatever, a $2 or $50 fine. I can see the history of it. I mean, it clearly makes sense. And I do appreciate sharing Salem's bylaw. That did not go unnoted. But I think this will create more of a cloud on it. I don't think it's an issue. I certainly would not at all support anyone trying to put Donna out of business. And I don't think we need to reach or Wes, where Wes is probably more at risk because he just admitted he doesn't live in town. And whether you yourself do it or you bring visitors. So I think it's really going to create a little more of a damper on commercial business in East Long Meadow that would at least arguably partake in it and would force the town to be a little more regulatory than I care it to be. So I would not support adopting this. That's just me.
Through the chair, I'd just like to make one comment. We put our bylaw committee in place primarily to review bylaws. So I would advocate in the same direction that my other two council members are at this point in time.
Any other, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
I could-
I want to give everybody else a chance. My last comment through the chair would be that if we do not have a bylaw, if we do not adopt a bylaw, you cannot really be in violation
Of something that doesn't
of something
exist.
that doesn't exist. So you can't be said to be operating illegally by telling fortunes if we don't have a law, is my opinion. It sounds like a legal opinion, but it's not supposed to be. Practical opinion.
Ralph, were you going to say something or no?
I'd just like to comment on the last, if I'm understanding this right, this is out of Mass General laws and whether or not we're willing to adopt this as one of our own. I don't think at this time that it would be appropriate to. That's just my opinion. I think there's too many variables. I think we're opening up a can of worms that is just going to spread even worse.
Okay. Is it fair then to say that it makes the most sense at this time to not address the matter, set the matter aside, and proceed without the existence of a bylaw or the need for one?
Through the point of order, should we close the public hearing before taking a vote?
Yeah. Yes, I will do that, but
Okay.
then.
I would just echo what you said through the chair, is close the public hearing, but my thoughts were at least have a vote not to adopt,
That's where I'm going, yes.
185I.
Yeah.
And actually, as opposed to letting the matter just kind of fall aside, but actually say, no, we're not at this point. Reserving the right in some future time to adopt it, but but not at this point.
Okay, then I will officially close the public hearing, and then I will entertain a motion from someone at the table here that the council can react to.
All right, I'll make a motion that the town of East Long Meadow does not adopt Chapter 140, Section 185I, fortune teller's license for the reasons mentioned in the public hearing, including but not limited to the fact that it would create much more confusion, that the residency requirement, albeit as being challenged and so forth. Okay, I'm getting the cut from people. Anyway, that's the motion. I'll leave it at that. I can keep going.
Madam President?
Yes.
I don't think this council has the option to adopt a state statute.
Right.
The state statute remains on the books. The council has the option of whether or not to implement its own bylaws pursuant to that statute.
So something.
I think it would be appropriate to move not to act on the authority granted by that statute.
So really, our motion should say that.
All right, I'll withdraw the motion and restate the motion that I'll make a motion that the town council not adopt Chapter 140, adopt Chapter 140, Section 185I.
No.
Not implement.
Not implement.
Okay, take three. I make a motion that the town of East Long Meadow not implement Chapter 140, Section 185E.
At this time.
At this time. There you go.
I'm going to second that.
Yeah, whatever he said, yeah.
Motion's been made and seconded. I'm not going to repeat that.
Don't blame you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Okay, I think we have a position that we are willing to stand with. Thank you. Moving on to our next public hearing, the proposed zone change at Rear Pease Road, parcel 33-1-0, from resident AA to industrial/industrial garden park. Mr. Florence, do you have that information? Do I have it here or no?
Yeah, I put it right next to you.
No, I thought when you gave that to him, here it was for Mike, not for me. Okay. The reason for this public hearing is to address a zone change at Rear Pease Road, parcel 33-1-0, from residence AA to industrial/industrial garden park zoning district. Councilors from left are Councilors Page, Anderson, Hill, Kane, and Henry. I will open the public meeting, ask the clerk to read the legal notice into the record, then have the applicant, in this case represented by Attorney James Martin, address the council regarding the specific zone change at Rear Pease Road. Again, as we've said many times, this meeting is recorded. I would ask that you come to the table and state your name and address, and please be direct and address your remarks to the council and not to one another or those in the audience. After the public has finished their comment, I will close the hearing, and the council at that time will have discussion and take appropriate action. So that said, Mr. Florence.
Yes.
It's yours.
The East Long Meadow Town Council will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, September 10th, 2019 at 6:45 p.m. in the media room at the Council on Aging located at 328 North Main Street to address a zoning change at Rear Pease Road, parcel 33-1-0, a 21.26 plus acre site from Residence A to an industrial/industrial garden park zoning district. Information related to this amendment is on file with the town clerk and available for review by the public. For the council, Thomas Florence, clerk of the council.
Okay. Mr. Martin.
Good evening. As some of you know, and others who are new, we initiated this process quite some time ago by coming before you at the outset to request that you take the zone change petition and forward it to the planning board for a public hearing on our request. This is known as Zero Pease Road South, and it is at the very southern tip of East Long Meadow, bordering Summers. It is part of the old Bilton Farm. It is a wooded, vacant lot, and my client, PLHHC and ECOS, proposed putting a solar farm on there, which would complement a solar array project that they already have approved in Summers, Connecticut. We went to the we went to the planning board, and as I said at the time at the end of the hearing, we didn't need to be a weatherman to know which way the wind was blowing by the board, and they did not endorse the petition to this council. We then went before the subcommittee, and they too were not in favor of the zone change. In the meantime, my client pursued an independent course in the land court, and that was an action that the town was a party to. And on August 20th, 2019, the Chief Justice of the Land Court issued a written decision. And in that decision, it's fair to say that the owner, the taxpayer here, the applicant, prevailed against the town of East Long Meadow, and the land court ruled against the town of East Long Meadow and its zoning arrangement restricting solar activities to the two industrial garden and industrial districts. And I should just clarify, in this now, we have, as we were going through this process, we agreed that we really could only be an industrial garden because this property has no frontage, so it wouldn't qualify as industrial garden. And during that process, whether at the planning board or at the subcommittee hearing, we presented factual and legal arguments as to why we thought the zone change would be appropriate, because we didn't think it was proper and legal to regulate zoning as the town had done. And there was history of how it came about. It's in the record in the court and at our hearings, at town meetings. And I understand now that the town council has been presented with a written decision. It was, I guess it just recently presented to them and to you, I should say. And I also, my client, relying on this decision, which at the end of it, I don't know if you've had a chance to study it that much, gave the applicant an option, and one of the options was to come back in now that the town had prohibition had been declared illegal, and said, go to the planning department, put your application and start the process as you would normally. And that, unfortunately, through some breakdown in communication, didn't quite get processed to the planning department, and the petition was rejected because, for the reason that it was not appropriate in the zone. I am told today that that planning department was unaware of this decision, as were several other people. And so we had intended until 3 o'clock to present the petition based on the ruling in the land court. We thought you would have no choice but to grant it. But in the spirit of cooperation and, looking forward to, building a solar array here and working with the town, my client would not object if the town council would like to request an extension or a reasonable continuance of the hearing in order to give it time to digest the decision, to look at the options presented by the court, and work with the petitioner in order that we can move forward.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
I guess I'm sort of taking the drama out of this tonight and saying, if you'd like us to go forward, we're prepared to, but we would not object if the council wanted to say, we'd like to continue this public hearing now and save our energy. Obviously, there could be a public hearing going forward or not, but we'd rather direct our energies with the town to following the court's order.
I appreciate your remarks. Just to echo what Attorney Martin has said, the land court justice did render a decision on August the 20th, but that information only found its way to Attorney Maynard's office yesterday. And so he advised Ms. McNally and myself that that decision had been made. And so the counselors here have not had any advance opportunity yet to look at the decision or to discuss among ourselves what we ought to do and how to proceed. So now I'm going to defer again to Attorney Maynard.
And I appreciate Mr. Martin's position on behalf of his clients. Just to clarify on the record, however, the issues to be resolved in the lawsuit by PLH are somewhat different from this petition for a zoning change. I think the point that Mr. Martin and I would agree on is that a zoning change may be unnecessary if the proposed project is to go forward, notwithstanding it is a residential zone. Mr. Martin and I might disagree exactly on the import of the decision by the land court. I think it's fair to say the land court has provided the town, certainly the land court has declared under the pertinent statute that the town cannot prohibit ground-based solar arrays in a residential zone. But it has left open to the town the ability to regulate, reasonably regulate, as long as regulations are not unreasonable with respect to this particular proposed project, and has invited the town to consider what those reasonable regulations might be with respect to this project. So that would be the next task, I think, for the planning board. But I would certainly agree with Mr. Martin that it makes sense to put off consideration of this zoning change for a period of time, ultimately to determine whether a zoning change is even necessary.
Okay.
That is fair. That's a fair summary as well. The court did say that by October 4th, the parties have to report back and file a joint statement. I'm summarizing here. And one of the options, it essentially gave two options. Include a request by the town to go forward and legislate in this area by enacting zoning bylaw provisions that would regulate in accordance with this ruling. So that is that they can be reasonably governed, emphasis on reasonable, and probably would go through the planning board process, which is what we tried to do Friday. Here's our application. We want to start this determination, but because of that disconnect or unfortunate failure to get the decision, they didn't know. And then, or if the plaintiff wishes now to proceed, which is what we did, they can go back before the planning board and apply for a permit, which we tried. And so all this would be the preferred way to deal with it rather than forcing a zone change, which essentially the court does say, you may not need a zone change because you can have it in any district, just, go for it and be reasonable. So in terms of continuing this in the town's decision to consider making, some alternative reasonable regulations or having us go through the planning board, we just want to keep moving forward, the inertia of moving forward. So I think it's, if we could come back, I don't know when your next meeting is it 2 weeks, a month? Or?
It's on the 24th, 2 weeks.
And I don't know if that's enough time, but perhaps 4 weeks we can come back and
I would
keep this on the agenda. So that would be acceptable to the petitioner.
I would propose, with Mr. Martin's agreement, that it be put over to the first meeting in October. In the meantime, I'll be working with the planning board and expect to be able to advise the court jointly with Mr. Martin's client and other counsel what the plan is going forward as of October 4. And then I think Mr. Martin will be in a position by the time of that first council meeting in October to know whether he needs to move forward with his petition then or not.
Is that meeting on or before October 4th? October meeting?
No, the first meeting in October is on the 8th.
Okay, so that's plenty of time because the parties have to report back to the land court by October 4th.
Right.
So that would work smoothly.
Okay. I'm still going to stay with the protocol and say, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this matter tonight? Seeing none, I'll ask now the council if they have questions or comments.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't kidding. Literally, I am reading this as Attorney Martin was speaking. And I will reread and reread it again, but something that caught my attention in the decision. The need for regulation or even the denial of permission must in all districts be weighed in accordance with the need to protect public health, safety, or welfare. And one of the points that I was making in our subcommittee was, and I understand what the petitioner was doing because those were the cards he or she were dealt, is to use the method of industrial as the zone change. And that was my focus, is what I was opposed is using a sledgehammer and a petty nail. And I think, one thing I did mention in the subcommittee, and that's something that can be considered by the planning board and so forth, is whether it's an overlay district or whether it's another zone change, it's not to have it haphazard throughout the town of East Long Meadow, but to actually consider and debate a green bylaw, a solar bylaw or something to that effect. And as opposed to coming in with saying, we're going to turn this into an industrial zone. By our own admission, the shelf life of these things are 25 years. We're going to put bonding money, and then what's left is an industrial zone, the most permissive. So I just want to make that point out there is, and again, I'm not faulting you for using that approach because that is the approach you had, but I think there are other options out there, including considering a green bylaw. So anyway, I put in my 2 cents.
Through the chair?
Yes.
What's in front of us right now is a zone change from residence AA to industrial garden park. I understand the petitioner, his interest in putting a solar farm onto this property, but with all due respect, that's not what's in front of us. They have not submitted a site plan or anything like that, and because we don't allow, at this time, ground-mounted in residence AA. Obviously, that may change with a court ruling or something, but what's in front of us is a zone change. Do we think that parcel should be zoned industrial or industrial garden park? I think we need to take a vote on that, on whether or not we want a change, and then address the solar bylaw, and if we want to, like Don said, try and create a green overlay district, or try and do a bylaw that possibly regulates the size in certain locations, or whatever is not considered unreasonable by the state. I will say, I was the only member at town meeting to stand up against the ground-mounted photovoltaic arrays. With that being said, the Attorney General actually okayed the bylaw after it was approved by the residents. And I'm just in amazement that our Attorney General can say your bylaw is fully legal, good job. And then a court can turn around and say, no, that's not right. It just boggles my mind. I'm not sure how, but that's not in front of us. A zone change is. And I think we should act on the zone change tonight.
Anyone else? Okay, at this time, I'm closing the public hearing. Mr. Maynard, did you?
I was just going to remind the council that Mr. Martin has graciously offered to avoid any further contention between the town and his client by delaying consideration of his request for zoning change until that first, at least until that first meeting in October. I understand Councilor Page's position, but as town attorney, I would recommend avoiding that further contention if we can.
And could I just clarify, Madam President, you
Yes.
said I want to close the public hearing. I think we're just continuing the public hearing, correct, now that you've opened
Well, to a degree.
But we have to have this, but we can only continue it if we have a specific place to put it. And it's
Right.
going to be our first October
Yes,
meeting
right.
at 6:30?
Whatever time you like.
6:30 would be the first one.
Okay. So is it in order to make up that motion right now, to continue?
Yes, that's where we're going.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Then I will make a motion to continue this public hearing until, what's the date?
October 8th.
October 8th at 6:30, right here.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of continuing this matter until Tuesday, October 8th at 6:30, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Okay, the matter passes 4-1. So this will be continued until that time.
Have a nice evening. See
Thank
you on
you.
the 8th, maybe.
All right.
We can have it.
Yeah. Well, I did.
I didn't know.
Go ahead, Madam.
I didn't know what email or just.
No, because the town didn't have it yet.
I literally.
Where this is sitting. I knew the decision, but then just conversation. I didn't have it.
No, you're right. Well, anyway, that's good to have it. Okay.
All right, moving on to orders of the day, licensing matters. This information is all in your packet. The first one is approval of a one-day liquor license for St. Paul the Apostle Church for a wedding reception on September 14th, 2019, from 5 to 11 p.m. That application is in your packet. Are there any questions about it? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve that one-day liquor license.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor of approving the one-day liquor license for St. Paul the Apostle Church for September 14, from 5 to 11 p.m., please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Second licensing matter, approval of a one-day liquor license for St. Paul the Apostle Church, also for a wedding reception on September 29th, from 5 until 11 p.m. Are there any questions or comments regarding that application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor of approval of a one-day liquor license for St. Paul the Apostle Church for September 29, 2019, from 5 to 11 p.m., please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. That motion carries unanimously. And thirdly, we have the approval of a change of manager and change of officers/directors for the Gunther Rowley Post 293 American Legion Incorporated. And that application is also in your packet. Is the applicant here this evening?
Yes.
Yes, he is, okay. These lights are bad tonight.
Roger Kelman, American Legion Post 293 in East Long Meadow. I'm not going to sit down because this will be very quick. The state Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission requires that we keep them up to date with our bar manager and also with our officers and directors. We do have elections every year, so this is purely an administrative change. There are no changes to the regulations or to the operation of the facility under the current liquor license.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those, anyone have questions regarding this?
It's just the motions to
Through
approve.
the chair.
Yes.
Has Tom checked everything is in order?
Tips, court checks, everything's in order.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion for the change of manager to Walter Esposito and change of officer/director for Gunther Rowley Post 293 American Legion Incorporated.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor of the approval of change of manager and change of officers, directors for Gunther Rowley Post 293 American Legion, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. Good luck with everything. Okay, now we can move to financial matters, and we have our Finance Director, Sarah Menard, with us this evening to give us a report on department turnbacks from fiscal year 2019. Good evening, Sarah. How are you?
Good, and yourself?
We're good.
So, these are the turnbacks as of last Friday. Please keep in mind that these are the unaudited figures and that they are for discussion and informational purposes only for tonight. I do not consider any of the numbers final until an audit is complete because there may be slight adjustments that need to be made as a result of that. We have approximately $600,000 worth of turnbacks, which is about typical that we have. So each year, let me start over, excuse me. Typically what happens is that we have the appropriation. Individual departments then spend to their appropriation. If they don't need to use the money for whatever purposes, then it essentially gets turned back at the end of the year. And what happens is then this turn back becomes part of how our free cash calculation works. So the money is then still used for other purposes at that time when free cash is allocated, so it doesn't just disappear or anything like that. So we have a total of $621,000 in turnbacks. I don't know, do you want me to read each department? Do you want me to just highlight the larger ones? How exactly would you like me to go forward?
I think the report is self-explanatory, but I would first ask, you're saying that give or take $621,000, that's typical?
It's not a crazy amount difference. It depends on the year. Between 400 and 600
Okay.
is pretty. It happens depending. This year we had quite a few vacancies, quite a few turnovers, so that causes issues. We also had several new departments or new initiatives that began. So for example, the fire department, that the ambulance service started in July. We also had the dispatch start. So when we budgeted, we estimated when both of those would have their staff and have them hired, but then hiring might not have happened exactly at that time, or perhaps the estimates of those started when we got some better prices with state contracts and things of that nature. So as a result, then we might have a little bit more turn back in those areas, which is what we did see this past year. So for example, the fire department is turning back approximately $42,000. That is all related to salary. We had budgeted for the 4 new employees to begin in August. There were only 3 that were actually good candidates that we hired. So that 4th position wasn't hired until January, when we then had 5 hired, but then one of the individuals did not make it through the academy. So as a result, we still did not have full staff. So that's going to impact. As well, in the fire department, we budget for the worst but hope for the best. So concerning the call firefighters, we did have turn back relating to that because we had a very good year emergency-wise, and therefore didn't need to have a lot of call firefighters come in and pay a lot of money out of that. So those were actually good things as to why that there was turn back. For the dispatch department, which has the largest amount right now, it's $134,000 or so. So what happened was that we budgeted for dispatch to be in place in, I believe it was August, but dispatch did not go live until February 1st. So because of that, there's going to be a lot of salary figures that would be left. Another thing is that with the changing of how we were doing dispatch, we knew we were going to be applying for grants, but we weren't sure what ones we would qualify, how much would be allowed. We did wind up receiving $16,000 in reimbursement, so that did not get charged to the department, it got charged directly to the grant. But when we budgeted, we had to assume that we were going to be liable for everything. So as a result, that's why it was $134,000. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does.
Yeah. Okay.
Could you speak to the $772,000 turn back on health insurance? Usually,
yes,
everyone in America is paying out for health insurance.
Yes, but
We did.
Well, I know we paid out, but it seems unusual to have that kind of a surplus.
No, I wouldn't say that it would be. So what we have to do is when we have any kinds of vacancies or planning, we have to assume that individuals being hired are going to take a family plan, and we assumed that they were going to take the more expensive of our popular plans. Not the most expensive plan, but the most common of our offerings. In that, the employer share is about $16,000, so that's really only a couple of people that we assumed were family plan. We also have to make an estimate because some individuals might be an individual when they start the year, but by the end of the year they might be a family plan or vice versa. So we do have to take our best guess as our population, and as I mentioned, we did have quite a few vacancies, so that caused the health insurance to also see some positives from an expense standpoint because then we had no one taking those benefits. Does that make sense?
It does.
And the similar kind of thing when you're looking at the employee benefits line, that's the Medicare, that's based directly on our payroll that we pay the taxes on. So when payroll's lower, therefore then our taxes are lower.
Okay. Anybody else with questions for Sarah?
The utilities, we had a great, our solar meter credits were wonderful this year, as well as utilities overall. We did very well with our budget. And then another one that you'll see a larger amount is the Human Resource Department of $69,500, and that's primarily due to the 2 vacancies, the administrative assistant and then the director. We did have some offset due to stipends that we were paying to help do coverage and some outsourcing, but still, that's not the same thing as when you have somebody there full-time the whole year.
I was just going to say, first of all, this is Great work, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. And question, the 6:30 rec department, they owe us money? Or-
No, that was.
I'm facetious, so you know that.
No, what had happened there was at the time when I had to give the figures,
Yeah.
in order to make this meeting on time, that the bookkeeper that split between IT and
Oh,
rec, I
yes.
did a true-up allocation of the actual hours
Yeah.
spent.
Okay.
And so it's just a simple switch between IT and rec department, so that is fixed now. But at the time of the report, and I was like, well, I have to get it on time, so it's just a minor thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think,
I'm good.
yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you budget for this? If every year we get 400 to 600,000 turnbacks, how is that accounted for? Would that, if we budgeted for it, would it reduce our mill rate?
It would reduce our mill rate, but there are certain things that with over $60 million budget, it is very hard to be exact. You don't know what personnel costs are going to be. You know, you take your best bet and you say, okay, if we were able to hire and fill every position for the entire time, this is how much it would cost. So because we wound up having vacancies and turnovers that we weren't planning on, or retirements, and then when you fill a retirement, so for example, on the school side, if you fill a retirement, you would be filling somebody at a much lower pay rate. And that did happen with the school department and a couple other departments as well. So you really...
But you have said that you don't necessarily schedule the most expensive plan. It's usually a reasonable one in the middle.
Mhm.
And so being conservative, I guess, means not assuming everyone's going to be hired January 1st, but
Correct.
hired through the year. So what you're telling me is you are being conservative in that sense, but you're down to the point where 400 to 600 is too small to have
Well, but then you
have a
also
difference.
have whatever the, how do I word this? So when you, at the end of the year, you have to encumber, which means that you are accruing, or you are saying, I have an outstanding liability from the fiscal year that I haven't paid as of June 30th yet, but I know that that invoice is coming. So some of the turnback is relating to that from the year before. So if I said, I don't know my final bill, but I know I need to accrue for something just in case, because I know I had that service, but I don't have the final invoice. So there is some relating to that. So when you net the two together, it really winds up being like 200,000 in total. When you take from prior year and this year, which is a whole lot closer. And since I began here, we have, it used to be more like the 600,000 difference between the two. And we've gotten it down to 200,000. So that's a big deal when you're talking about a budget this large. So I mean, it's not perfect, and when you're budgeting in March for the following year, you know. But I think that we are on the right track, and that this year I'm very excited. We did some additional trainings of all departments, the department heads and the individuals within their departments that do invoicing and things like that. And so we had trainings back in May. And I feel like this year the close went so much better than it did last year. And I feel that our accruals and our encumbrances for the next year are much more accurate than they were the year before. And so I'm really happy to say that everybody, I think, did a very nice job this year, and to keep up the good work. And I think we'll keep getting better every year like we have.
Good.
Thank you.
Through the chair, just, so the turnback basically goes back into the general fund?
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that's where we then fund emergencies, or we funded 2 capital projects in June out of there, those kinds of things. And it also speaks to the stability of the town in total as part of our reserves.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Any questions?
Just another comment, it's actually for the public, but I'm sure Sarah will echo in. Just let the public know that we haven't really set the mill rate for this year. That's because the first 2 tax bills are estimated bills.
Correct.
And we're going to wait for the cherry sheet and how much, funds we have from the state. And this will actually could be used to help reduce the estimated mill rate to a lower number a little bit.
It could be. We'll see what happens. We are going to start working on that in probably the next week or two. My auditors come out this coming Monday to begin, so I'll probably wait for them to be here.
One of my rooms that I wanted for my hearing. Thank you.
That they'll be here about a week or so before that. Then we'll start the tax rate recap. But we will finish that sometime in October and actually set the rate. And we also, as part of setting the tax rate, we do also have to plan for any ATB cases that are coming up and things like that. And so there's lots of moving pieces. This is one of the components, but there are many, many moving pieces that we, the finance team as a whole, has to consider in order to submit to the state. And once our auditors are at least 75% through the audit, then I begin all of the reporting to the state. And so if something comes up during then too, then we incorporate that into the tax rate to try to make sure we have the best numbers possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. Anyone else?
Just a quick question. Who are our auditors?
Scanlon and Associates.
Scanlon, thanks.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Moving to old business. The recommendation of the Town Council Planning Matters Committee regarding mixed-use district bylaw and rezoning of 330 Chestnut Street from industrial garden park to mixed use. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, we just had a meeting on Monday. We had full attendance of the committee members, as it was very productive, and we have scheduled another one for the 23rd. The only thing is we're still looking for a place to hold the meeting. Our first and second choices have already been scoffed up. Thank you, auditors. So we're working on that. Basically, just let the public know what it's all about is the planning board has given the council, and the council then gave to the subcommittee a proposed mixed-use bylaw as well as a table of uses. And the subcommittee has gone through it on our own and more formally, as individuals, and then more formally through our subcommittee meetings. And, we're raising questions about, let's say hypothetically, the proposal from the planning board says minimum 5% business and commercial use. And let's say the subcommittee says, no, we want it to be 15 or 20, hypothetically. So these are the kind of things, heights of buildings, area coverage, what's the minimum stuff. So everything's on the table. So what it is the planning board, the subcommittee is going to report back to the town council and say, here's what the planning board gave us, here's what we recommend. We could say we like it as it is, or make some constructive changes to it. And then at that point, the council would vote, or actually probably would defer back to the planning board, I would think, just for some further comments, since we're changing theirs through the council, and then it'll come back and then come to us for a full vote to approve or not to approve. And then the petitioner, not the planning board, but the actual developer, can then come to the planning board saying, here's this new bylaw that the or zone change and table of uses that the town council has approved, and we want to apply for this project. So that's really where the process is. So our meeting was last Monday. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks. We're going to try to have a regular schedule and try to the degree we can fast track something. We have to be mindful of getting rooms together and also getting our members together. Everybody either has a job or other commitments. And so we tried, we said we were very fortunate that we had 100% attendance at the last meeting. So that's basically it. So we're not ready to make a recommendation because we're still working on what the council has given us through the planning board and making changes and comments to that.
Okay, thank you. Moving to new business, number one, determination to use approved voting machines per MGL Chapter 54, Section 34. Mr. Florence.
Yeah, this vote is, not to say more of a formality, that we have 4 months, and again, the bylaws in your packet, Chapter 54, of letting the Elections Division know that we are changing and we're going to use different voting machines. And in this case, we're going to go to the full digital scanning machine as compared to the optical scanning machine that we've used for the last 14 years, or 15 years. So tonight, again, it's just a vote to let the Secretary of State's office know that the town of East Long Meadow is changing the use of their voting equipment.
Okay, so is there any action that we need on our part?
It's just to take the motion to say that we are changing our equipment.
Would you like me to read it?
Yes, I would.
I make a motion to approve the use of new full digital scanning voting machines and discontinue the optical scanning voting machines per Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 54, Section 34.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there discussion?
Yes. If I read what was given to us, we need to specifically identify the equipment, and I'm not sure that the motion identifies it as ImageCast Precinct ICP by whatever. Says the vote must specifically
Yes.
state to start using the
Okay.
exact equipment.
So, can you amend your the motion?
Would that be appropriate, Tom?
What's that?
Is that the right name for this
Yes.
equipment, ImageCast Precinct?
Yeah, that's the,
I think the motion's got it defined as full digital scanning, so that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Correct.
So you've made a motion to amend.
To amend it, to amend
Yep.
the wording of the,
To-
to add the names of ImageCast Precinct.
Right.
I would second that amendment.
The motion's been made, seconded, amended, and seconded.
So are we voting on the amendment first, then on the main motion right after the amendment is passed?
If he chooses to add it to his amendment.
Or I will change my
motion.
Withdraw your original
I will
amendment?
withdraw my original.
I know that feeling
and
from earlier
change it
today, thank you
to-
very much.
Would you like to go through, Mr. Henry, exactly what it was?
All right, I move to approve the use of full digital scanning voting machines, specifically the ImageCast Precinct, ICP, and discontinue the optical scanning voting machines per Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 54, Section 34.
I will second that.
The motion's been made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Tom's happy.
Okay, new business D2, discussion of town council vacancy in accordance with Article 2, Section 8 of the Charter. I essentially addressed this topic when I spoke about Mr. Ford's statement earlier, but just as a very quick recap, the council will have a special meeting solely for the purpose of interviewing any interested candidates for the vacancy on September 24th at 5 p.m. And we will roll into the regularly scheduled meeting at 6 p.m. that evening. Okay, the next item is the establishment of a bylaw for the periodic review of the charter by special committee per Article 9, Section 2 of the charter. Again, the charter speaks to the fact that in a year ending in zero, for every year ending in zero, the charter, the council must appoint a special committee to review the charter and come back and make recommendations to the council within 90 days of hearing the report. Before we can appoint a committee to start that process, because we're fast approaching the year 2020, we must establish a bylaw that actually speaks to the whole topic of periodic review. Thinking about your analogy previous, Mr. Henry, about not giving this to the bylaw committee because they don't write the bylaws, then I then asked Mr. Florence, do we have language that you can refer to from maybe our general code consultant about the actual verbiage that could then be sent to the bylaw committee?
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of samples to get that information to the bylaw committee.
Okay. So, Pat?
Through the chair, I would
Yes.
suggest that there must have been a bylaw originally to establish the original charter commission, or something of that nature that might be helpful to us in determining not just the bylaw, but the parameters. For example, how many town councilors should be on that committee? Should there be a maximum? What number, how many should there be? 7, 9? I mean, you know, I don't think that's carved in stone either. So there's some issues like that, that probably we'd like to look at the sample before we as a council should make that decision.
Certainly, that's what I'm saying. Once Tom gets that, it'll go to your committee to flesh out and then come to the council. Yes? Are you seeing it that way? Yeah.
I'll try to get a variety of samples, because there should be plenty out there.
All right. Moving on then. The appointment of an administrative assistant to the town manager. Now I'm going to defer to Mary to speak about that a little bit.
Thank you. As you probably know, I'm sure you know, Mark Roca has offered her resignation, and she's going to enter retirement September 17th. I hardly know her, but it breaks my heart. So it's imperative from my point of view that that you grant me the authority to appoint someone. I think as an interim manager, I don't have that authority unilaterally or without your consent, blessing, if you will. So I have interviewed 6 people, all of whom were really great, and so I'm having a little bit of difficulty in my own mind filtering through which ones. But I think there are 2 that I'm down to 2 from the 6. So I've told all the candidates that I've interviewed that I'll be making a decision by Friday. So I hope you entrust me with that authority to do so, and be happy to identify that person later, but I don't think either of the top two have notified their current employers, so I don't really want to mention their names here, in the event they haven't done that.
Mary is correct. As an acting town manager, the charter does not extend the authority to hire, fire, discipline without the consent of the council. So listening to your statements here, I would entertain a motion to give Mary the authority to select an administrative assistant, hopefully it doesn't sound like there would be an opportunity for transition.
Well, both of the top 2 have indicated that they would be willing to take time off during the balance of this week and perhaps Monday and part of Tuesday next week to sit with Marge, at least for a period of hours, if not an entire day or 2. So that's kind of what helped them get to the top of the list, to be frank. But no, it's very important. And she's been great because she's making cheat sheets, if you will, of tasks and duties and calendaring of events. And so she's making her successor position will be made much more facile for that person by virtue of what she's doing for us now.
Okay,
so we would be giving authority for her to hire.
Correct.
Just want to make sure that's clear and not select.
If we were not in the position of an acting manager and we had a permanent sitting manager, none of these appointments would cross this table other than an FYI, I've hired this individual or that. So right now we have to be the approving authority to give the acting manager
The authority to hire.
Correct. I'll
moved.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to give our acting town manager the authority to hire an administrative assistant to the town manager.
And
all those in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next.
The next
And in
item,
the same vein.
effectively, is equally as urgent, in my view. In the few hours I've spent in the town manager's office, the HR function really needs attention. And I know it's been, the director's position has been absent or vacant since October, I believe, of last year. And countless day-to-day issues have come up as a result of having no, not that there's no attention being paid to it, but it's sporadic and it's not consistent. And let me just suffice it to say there's a lot of problems. So we are, the town is currently engaging the services of a third-party consultant that is based in Connecticut at a significant hourly rate, which they deserve. I'm not contesting that. But I think I have an option. I have a consultant in mind who will work at in-house for 10 hours to 12 hours a week to provide those HR services that are immediately needed over a short-term period. So it's a short-term, part-time, temporary appointment of a HR consultant to function to take care of some of what I've identified as the immediate needs. There are countless documents that have to be reviewed and policies that have to be updated and implemented. And I know this person, I've worked with her in the past, and I have great confidence that she can tackle those tasks ASAP and do a very good job.
Just for some clarification, the contract we have with the consulting firm in Southern Connecticut is on a pay-as-you-need the service. So we are not expending any money while keeping their services under contract unless we activate that. So there's no, it's not as though we are paying two entities at the same time.
And I did want to keep them, there's a 60-day notice provision for termination of that contract. I had initially thought about whether it was appropriate to execute that notice now, but I think in light of the myriad nature of some of the problems, I'd prefer to keep them on hold and not terminate or not give notice of termination of that contract. But as the president says, just we wouldn't be using that firm unless we absolutely needed to. And there's no designated commitment or obligation on a weekly or monthly basis. It's an as-needed sort of contract. So we're not in violation, at least in my view, of any of the terms of that contract. So I'd like your authority to appoint that person as well.
And we have budgeted in the budget for human resource, so this would already be monies appropriated for.
There is a line item for human resources, so yes, it's not as though we now have to ask Sarah to create some money for us.
Right, well, in addition to the turnback, the same salary amount for the director was appropriated for 2020 and is not being used. So there's a substantial amount of money in those line items that.
But I'm sensing from your remarks that the money that might be expended here would not even come close to the monies that have been encumbered.
It would not. It's about a third of the hourly cost, and on a short-term basis, I mean, it's a very good solution, in my opinion.
I'll entertain, unless there's other questions, entertain a motion again to give Mary the authority to put a part-time human resource consultant under contract.
I'll second that.
Motion made, seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you again.
And finally, the last appointment is the appointment of an acting town clerk. Mary, you're on again.
I was starting to get a complex as I walked in the door of town hall, and I was told, well, your assistant's leaving in a week and your illustrious town clerk is leaving on October 1st. So all of the support seemed to be crumbling, but I'm exaggerating. Not that we won't miss both of them, but with Tom's pending departure, I would again ask the council's blessing, if you will, or approval of appointing an acting town clerk, and my suggestion would be the present assistant town clerk, who's Jeannie, obviously you know her, and I think she's more than qualified for the position. She's interested in it. She, in my view, my short time with her, I've been impressed with her dedication and her knowledge. So I think she'd be an excellent candidate for your consideration to fill the position of town clerk, acting town clerk going forward.
Any questions? Because Jean's taking notes and we'll have a record of it. I'll make the motion to give authority to Mary to appoint Jean Quaglietti as our acting town clerk.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Please say
Aye.
aye. Aye.
Congratulations.
Motion passes unanimously.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Chair. Under new business, we were talking about the review of the charter.
Yes.
I'm not sure we voted on that, or we need to. I know we went into discussion, but I would just like to clarify.
Well, what we have to do there is Tom has to bring us some information to react to.
Okay.
So we don't really need to vote to ask him to do that. He's just going to take care of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, it does look like we're heading toward the end of this.
I have a question.
Yes.
Who's throwing Tom the party? Nobody will ever replace him. He has been a godsend to this town.
You're very correct, Ms. Morissette.
Who's getting the party going? I'll help.
Well, we're not having it in your backyard.
That's right. That's right. So now we need to have a place. There will be proper acknowledgement, I assure you. We are down to summary action items for the next meeting.
Tomorrow.
Well, tomorrow's meeting is to meet with the search consultant, Community Paradigm Associates, to begin the formal process of seeking the permanent town manager. So that is a meeting just specifically for that. But for our next regularly scheduled meeting on the 24th, Mr. Florence will be getting us, hopefully sooner than later, some information on bylaws, and I think that's about it.
Right.
That said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned at 7:55 p.m. and we'll be in session again tomorrow evening
6 o'clock.
at 5:30.
Oh, 5:30.
Thank you and good evening.